Burnout was a lot for me too, because I felt like every title that I had was stripped away. It's one of the hardest things you can do, and it's hard for people who are go-getters to learn how to rest well. If you don't take the sabbatical will take you.
Welcome to the Make It Happen show. I'm Tim Morris, the CEO at The Entourage, and I'm so excited to bring you another fantastic interview with lots of insights you can implement into your business. Let's get into it. Justine Flynn, it is so good to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah, great. You'll notice I'm dialing in from home here as you are there. Normally we're in the studio at The Entourage, but I'm not doing that because it is Armageddon here at the moment. We've got a couple of young kids that are sick. I think everyone's doing that, and it's just juggle. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that's probably an area I'd like to talk about first, because you've talked about it before, about like juggling everything in business, dealing with the struggle as well. I'd love to hear how you've managed to handle it all. You've now been running for, I think it's over a decade, almost 12 years. You've had a couple of kids along the way. You've done amazing things. How have you handled it all?
Look, having kids is a whole new ball game, isn't it? Like, I feel like the level of adrenaline, like even in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., you're like, are they awake? Is that the baby crying? You know, like you have that level of adrenaline that constantly doesn't stop. And it's just trying to manage that, for me, is definitely something of like, how do I stay calm in the uncertainty of like not knowing when the baby's going to wake or something like that. It's funny you said it's like Armageddon where you are. We had quite a big weekend and we were exhausted Sunday night. We had a sleepless night because of the baby kept waking up. And then and then on Monday morning, actually afternoon, I discovered we had a mold outbreak throughout our whole house. The worst part was in our nursery. So the nursery smelt like fumes. So I was late a bit to you this morning because I've spent the whole morning, we're just trying to, like, the house is just turned upside down, trying to clean everything. But it's like these things don't stop, do they? It's just constant.
I'm glad you're a couple of minutes late because it gave me a breather, because this morning to get ready for this, it was pretty similar for me. It was just chaos. It's like I had to take one of the kids to daycare. They weren't due there today, but I just turned up. I'm like, you got to take him. I've got to do a bunch of stuff. But it's funny how it is, like, it does seem a little bit like life and in business. It's pretty similar how when the hits start coming, they tend to keep coming. And particularly when you're running an entrepreneurial business in kind of like chaotic environment, which the last couple of years have certainly been. Yeah, it's funny how sometimes you're like, when am I going to catch a break? Have you felt like that over your journey more than a couple of times?
Do you know how there's like those Facebook viral videos that go around? My favorite at the moment, and I don't usually laugh at people's expense because that's like, I'm not a sicko, but it's this lady who, like, she runs. I don't know if you've seen it, but she's running and she smashes into a glass wall, and then she stops and then goes again, but it was another panel of the glass wall. And then she just kept doing it over and over until finally she got out. And I just feel like it just represents what the last few years have been, right? Like 2020, you know, and then you like 2021, and it's like just constant, like, being smashed. And I have been reflecting on it a bit lately, because I think, you know, resilience and like part of our journey with Thankyou is like literally being like brick wall after brick wall after brick wall. And it's been about like having the right mindset in order to get through it. Otherwise you totally just get knocked out and stay down, you know? And yeah, like I feel like there's a few different ways in which you can look at it, and it's just assessing your situation and seeing how I would overcome this. So there's times I like to say, like, when there's a brick wall in front of you, it's tangible and you feel like this is as far as I can go. I can't go any further. But when you take a look up, all of a sudden you can see a different perspective. All of a sudden the sky is the limit. All of a sudden your possibilities are different, are endless. And it's just taking a different perspective. And we've done that so much through our Thankyou journey, where we've been told no and we've been given brick walls and just going, no, look up. And so for me, over the last decade and a bit, it's been trying to look for that, what's the possibilities, what's the way around this. But then I think there's a whole new flip side of it, and maybe this relates to where you're at with your kids. Is I found myself in a situation where the problem was too big. It was a health journey I was going through, and I couldn't do anything about it. I had looked for any way to get out of this situation, and there was literally nothing. It was bigger than I could face. And I actually had to just lean in. And I was reminded of what happens when you're stuck in a rip, the rips at
Mm.
the ocean.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I grew up in far north Queensland by the ocean, and we were always taught at school what you do when you're caught in a rip.
Yeah.
And I looked up the surf life saving thing, what they say on the website, and they said that the number one cause of drowning isn't actually the rip.
Mm. What is it?
The number one cause of drowning is exhaustion from trying to swim against it
Mm.
and panic from not knowing what's happening. And they say that you've got to lean back and float and put your hand up for help. And so I think there's two different ways when we're faced with these brick walls. There's the look up, and there's, looking for, is there a possibility? Is there a way around this? But for me, I was fighting too much. I was doing like that exhaustion, trying to swim against something that was bigger than I was. Um, and so I guess I feel like that. I think of that analogy a lot with the kids around and with all the chaos of life, of going, okay, I'm just going to have to lean in, lean back and float, put my hand up for help, and
Mm.
find those areas where I can get help and support in that
Mhm.
journey, but mainly just breathe and float through it, you know?
Yeah, that's a really interesting analogy. That's great. I think, and there's a funny transition point in that, and I see this quite a lot in business. It's like sometimes it's like fight, push through. A new idea will get you there. Look up, as you just
Hmm.
explained. Oftentimes go, push, 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 but then
Hmm.
sometimes you got to say, okay, let's stop, and we need a different approach, which is that,
Hmm.
let the rip take you.
Hmm.
Have you got any thoughts about like when you make that decision? Like how do you know it's time to flip the switch and think a bit differently?
I guess it depends on what the circumstance is, right? Like, so it's hard to just say a one size fits all with each scenario. I think it's hard because I actually think it's harder to do the lean back and float for most entrepreneurs, because I think a successful entrepreneur will have that get up and fight in them. And so I think it's when you know that you've tried everything that you can do, and you feel like maybe you're starting to drown a bit, and it's going, oh, hang on a second, I know for me, I had a burnout in 2018, and I was definitely going, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, like, and getting back into it. And then I was sick for quite a long period of time, and I was going to the doctors. They just kept giving me antibiotics. You'll be fine. Um, and I could tell there wasn't fine. And then it was like my body just all of a sudden shut down. And I remember the doctor, I went to an integrative doctor, and they said, you need to take 3 months off, with someone looking after your child. And I thought 3 months was huge. It ended up being 4 months. I ended up being bedridden for, because my body shut down completely. That I was dizzy. I couldn't see someone that I was talking to. My memory loss went completely. I couldn't remember a conversation I had that day. That was scary. Um, uh, yeah, and there were so many things that was going on, but I literally, yeah, couldn't get out of bed for about 4 months, and then it took a 9 month in total recovery journey before I was fully myself again.
Wow.
And that was hard because I couldn't. My body just chose for me.
You're like, okay, I've definitely got to do something about this. So that
Yeah,
was back in 2018.
yeah.
9 months journey to get through the other side,
Hmm.
and then what was the transition back into Thankyou like? Was that right at the
Yeah.
end of that 9 months? You're right back in, or that was a transition as well?
Mm. Well, because it was like the 9 months, what I had decided is I didn't want to come back in when I was still just half baked, like I wanted to come back when I was full energy and full at my full capacity. So I did slowly, amongst that 9 months, come back into the business slowly from a board level and different things. But then I was full back in 2019.
And so, if you look back on that period, though, did it help you remove yourself from the day-to-day operations of the business, like, on the other side? When you came back, it sounds like you came back in a different role. You started that new venture role. You mentioned more at board level. Was your role in the business different because you'd had to force yourself out? Or did you get back to your old ways and that transition took a little bit longer?
I definitely did come back in as brand director role.
Mm.
Eventually, I think 2000. I'm trying to remember all their all their times now. I think towards the end of 2019, I ended up coming back in as that brand director role, but in a different way. So I think in the way in which I operated was very different. You see, during that season of 2018 where I had that burnout, I actually feel like I learned so much and was able to what I call dig deep wells. I call that as like a season where you're going deep and you don't feel like you're going forward, but you're going deep. And then, it's something that you can draw from in years to come. And during that season of digging those wells, I know one of the things both Daniel and I learned, because he nearly went through a burnout as well and had a few months off in amongst that time too. And I had read this book and it talked about how 85% of what we do, someone else can do it,
Mhm.
which is a little
Mhm.
bit confronting.
Yeah, it's like,
10,
"Wait a minute.
yeah,
Surely it's only 70%."
I know, right? And then it's like 10% of what you do, someone who is trained and mentored
Yeah,
can do.
yeah.
And then 5% of what you do, only you can do.
Mm.
Now, when I read that, I started to write down what my 5% was. And I went straight into all of the things in Thankyou, right? And it was just filled of like all of the things I did within a work capacity.
Mm.
And then I continued on reading and it was like, so my 5% is, and it was really challenging because he's like, I'm the only one that can be that's a husband to my wife. I'm the only one that is a father to my kids. I'm
Mm.
the only one that's responsible for my health. Like you can't outsource someone going for a run for you,
No.
and I was so challenged, like
Mm.
having that moment. And I think also the burnout was a lot for me too, because I felt like every title that I had was stripped away. And even mum, even like obviously I was still a mum and obviously I was still Daniel's wife, but I was bedridden. I could hear my son being cared for in the room next to me and it really broke my heart, like not being able to be there in any capacity. So um yeah, it was that season of realizing, okay, what are the things here that are the most important? And the things that I want to have, I guess as my title, but being okay with what is my new identity. Is it Justine brand director? Like what is my identity? And I think it was this deep realization that it's not so much about what I do, but who I am. And I really want to focus on that because then it's through who you are that affects what you do and can help make an impact on those around you.
So your 5% is really around, like, who you are as a person, your relationships, and there must be a little bit of, like, a couple of thank you specific things in
Yeah.
there. What's made it into the 5%?
Yeah, I think with thank you, it would be like maybe strategy and uh, uh, even at the moment, I have actually stepped back from my management role, and
Mm.
I'm still getting asked to be part of the product development process, just so we can make sure our products are still in line with brand and everything like that. So
Mhm.
that's ended up in my 5% somehow. um, but yeah, and obviously like being a mom, being a wife, my health, that sort of thing.
Great. And so with the 95%, which I'm sure was probably like a normal person's like 130% actually. But with the with the 95%, how did you let go and delegate and get other people to do that? Did you develop some strategies or some techniques?
We've actually, through all of Thank You, we've actually applied this same filter through Thank You as well. So
Mm,
what is Thank You's 5%?
mm, cool.
Um, and we've actually moved towards more of a partnership model in Thankyou. I think for us, it's just stepping back a bit and not feeling like we have to control every single detail, and then just going, what is the 5% that that person's bringing that they bring in the way they do?
Well, from the outside looking in, because I've followed the Thank You journey for years, I think from my perspective, the thing that you guys bring is that spark of creativity to look at a problem differently. Like you have always, you said before, there's been all these brick walls, and you just come up with this clever idea about how you get through it. And you want to launch
Yeah,
a new range, and you got to raise the capital. You're like, let's do a book where people pay what they want, and then like the No Small Plan campaign. There's just this clever thinking that goes through all the time, and so if I was going to articulate maybe a 5% for Thank You, it's that creativity, that like let's zig while someone else is zagging, and then maybe you can bring the others into the execution. Does that gel, or you're like, nah, that's way off?
yeah, no, I think that's right. I think we've always asked why do things the way they've always been done before,
Mm,
and we continue that, and it is part of, I think we do challenge systems, and I think that's definitely something that we've come up against even as we launched No Small Plan. No Small Plan was definitely challenging the systems, but it was us saying, instead of us trying to do all of this ourselves, and it was another part of that percentage thing I was just telling you about, right? It was going, hey, we recognize that there are people who are doing this part of what we do really well, and maybe we could partner with them.
but you're right, those partnerships, get building those partnerships, or the network effect that comes from bringing a lot of people together. There's some magic in that, but it can take a huge amount of work. We've got a part of our business which is called the Entourage Growth Services, which is about matching up our customers, our members, with a network of providers from like marketing, sales, all sorts of stuff. And actually, the real power of the whole thing is the network that we've brought together. But getting that
Yeah.
network of people together, getting the 40 odd suppliers all like signed on, seeing what we see, committed to the thing, like
Yeah.
that freaking took ages. It took years of
Mhm.
work. And then having the relationship with the customers and being able to match make them. Yeah, it's kind of like one of those partnerships or a network of
Mhm.
people doing great things together. It's quite ethereal, but actually it can be the real secret sauce. So it
Mhm.
sounds like that's what you guys are doing.
I think another thing in that too, of when you asked about what are the tools that help step back, I mentioned before for me when I went through the burnout, there was the identity part of it, and me knowing who I am and having that confidence in that. We actually went through that in Thank You as well, and I think that really helped us as well, see everyone in our team become a lot more empowered. We reestablished, I guess, our vision and purpose and mission. Our brand logo and why it looks like this, and why we wouldn't do it this way, and why we wouldn't do it that way, and what it has done as it's brought so much, like I said before, that clarity amongst the team that's really helped empower
Mm.
people in their roles,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's also helped us to be able to step back as well and go, here's our manifesto, and it sort of has
Mm.
properly articulated it,
Mm.
and we
Mm.
realized that that's probably what we were missing in the years prior, is we had it in our head,
Ah,
and
got
we
it.
knew, you know, we
Yeah.
knew it, but it was instinctive rather
Yeah.
than actually be able to have it really clear out there on
Yeah.
paper.
That's really interesting to hear, because had you asked me a couple of years ago, who do you think's a really purpose-driven business that's really clear what their reason for being is, I probably would have said Thank You. And it's interesting to hear that even people we think are doing it really, really well can do it even better. You can encapsulate it better in your manifesto and bring people along more. The other side of that I sort of commented to myself on when I was just doing some preparation for this conversation is like the visual representation of the brand now, which is just one element of all that work you've done. It's really freaking cool these days. Like, you've done a lot of great work there. I just love how it all, the products tie together to the, everything on your website, all the campaigns, the treatment of like all the videos and all. It's really, really singing. So I'd like to touch on just a little bit more your journey, kind of elevating up into that board and strategy level, right?
Yeah.
Because we talked about it a little bit, but it's something that so many business owners, founders, entrepreneurs, it's a transition they want to make eventually. Like, people
Hmm.
don't start businesses to kind of be stuck in the operations forever, but so many do
Hmm.
find themselves there.
Yeah.
They all hear about, you want to be working on your business, not in your business, but it's just so elusive for some.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, what do your kind of days look like now? What is your involvement with the business like now?
Mhm.
And were there any kind of last shackles that you had to throw off to let you now operate the level you do rather than being so in the business?
Mm. Look, I think it was an easier transition for me because I took a year maternity leave.
A
Um,
second, is that a
I
second one? Not the first
Yeah,
time. It was the second
second.
time. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, this is the second. So, and during this time, it was actually really good because it was an undoing. It was a for me, being more present in the moment than the do. And so I think for me that journey was good in that stepping back. And from there, I think when you have space, I don't know if you feel it whenever you go on a long holiday, but all of a sudden you start getting ideas and you see things from a different perspective rather than being in it all the time. And I think there's something so healthy about having that time just to come back, and it's sort of like a circuit breaker, you know? And as I still was during that year off, I still continued my board role. So every couple of months, we'd still have our board meeting and was able to still keep in touch with the team. And I could just see our team was flying. Like everyone within our team are just smashing it. And I couldn't even see any gaps that were needed for me to jump into, um, which is actually such a great feeling. And to just be like, you guys are smashing it. I'm going to just continue supporting from this strategy and board level. And then, that frees me up. So I've actually just started studying this year. So from my day to day would look like that, having a few meetings, podcasts like with yourself. I have always wanted to, be involved with more things like this, but I had been too busy with the day to day. So it's freed me up more from speaking and that sort of thing. And then um, working on a few other things. I've written a
Great.
children's book. I didn't expect that to come.
Oh, wow.
Um,
So
yeah,
you've written a children's book.
yeah. So
Fantastic.
I just need the time now to publish it, but I'll
Yeah.
work on that at the end of this
Yeah.
year. So
Very cool. I think actually another takeaway I was taking from just as you were talking through that is like, so you took the maternity leave the year and that forced you out and made that transition easier. And so maybe it's maybe like a lesson from that is for like for the female founders, it's like take that time. For the guys, have paternity leave. Like push yourself out of the business. And then if you're not in that situation, in either of those situations, just force yourself to take the holidays, force yourself to take the hiatus, get yourself out of the business and let yourself operate at that level where your synapses are firing, and then your team can smash it out without you. And then you can get back and be like, oh, looks like everything's under control. I'll just keep on, thinking up the future.
yeah. Long service leave, how it's there, but then I think a lot of founders wouldn't take it.
Mm,
Or like I even remember the early days, Daniel was like, there is no way we're taking holidays, like we need to
mm.
be in here and we need to do this. I remember he even used to say, and we joke and laugh about this, so he'd be okay with me saying it, but he'd say, we only travel for purpose. So like we'd only go somewhere if there was a purpose for us going there, like a work thing or something
Yeah.
like that. And we now laugh at it because it was just that way of thinking for us was just so like task driven rather than, there's actually purpose in rest.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see you being
We
like, the purpose is for me to have a holiday and sit on the beach.
yeah, so we've now like come along on that journey and realizing how important rest is. It's one of the hardest things you can do, and it's hard for people who are go-getters to learn how to rest well, and the importance of how that actually helps everything else. And I think, like you said before, like I think if you don't take the sabbatical will take you. And unfortunately, I think that's what happened with me. And I think I see people that are kind of on that edge, and I'm thinking, just take that leave, like take it now, because I think the journey I went on, it would have been so much nicer if I could have taken it myself and
Yeah.
done hobbies or
Yeah.
whatever it
Yeah.
was along the journey.
Yeah. Jack Delosa, our founder, is really good at this. When the Entourage turned 10, which is a couple of years ago, he did take a 3-month sabbatical, long service leave,
Awesome.
because
Yeah.
I can't remember who he promised, but someone like a mentor of his years and years and years and years ago had said, when you hit 10 years, take a break. Because first of all, barely
Awesome.
anyone gets there. And second of all, you're going to need a break. I love you say, take a sabbatical. The sabbatical will take you. So he took 3 months off then, and he's just been to the
Awesome.
States for a while. Yeah, he does a very good job of that. Of course, I await his return. He's like, "You sitting down? I've got a ton of ideas." Of like, okay, let's go.
Yes, and see, that's what happens. Like, it's you actually creating that space just breathes creativity and innovation and ideas.
I've got a couple more questions to fire through. We call it make it happen in a minute. It's definitely at least a minute per answer. Don't worry, we don't need to get through all questions in a minute. We go through pretty rapid fire. I tend to be the one that derails it every time, so don't
Sure.
worry if you want to go on tangents. All right, Justine, question number 1. What's one thing you thought you would have grown out of but haven't?
This is really strange. Hiding behind doors and frightening people as they walk out.
Oh, that is
I
awesome.
did it to a friend's dad when I was 8, and he looked at me and said, "I could have punched you." And I was terrified. And you think I would have grown out of it from that moment, but I caught myself doing it to Daniel just the other day, and I'm like, "Oh, sorry, love." I don't know why. It's just this instinct that I have.
That's awesome. I'm going to go and scare someone from behind a door later today. If I get a black eye, it's your fault. Question number 2. What's the most important leadership lesson you've learned in the past year?
Actually, I think with this last year, I would just say that restrictions breed innovation. And we
Mm,
kind of learnt that a little bit with 2020.
mm,
But I didn't get to touch this with you yet, but I had quite a hard postnatal journey where I
mm.
actually was in a wheelchair at the end of the pregnancy.
Oh,
So
no.
I had a lot of restrictions,
Yeah.
and just learning to lean into that and
Mm,
realizing that they can actually breed innovation. And
mm.
yeah.
Yeah. I 100% agree, actually. I think constraints breed creativity so much. It's like,
Hmm.
we've all seen that over the last couple of years. We've been
Hmm.
severely limited in what we can do in business and in life, but all this great stuff
Yeah.
comes out of it. And then, hopefully we
Yeah.
carry some of that clever thinking forwards.
Yeah.
Question number 3. That was a good one. I obviously haven't seen these. That's why I'm so excited about them. What's what's one thing you will never do again?
Okay. Go too fast on that treadmill.
Oh,
And I'm
oh,
talking about the treadmill of business and life,
ah,
you know. I realized I was going too fast and I face plant. No one ever comes off a fast treadmill pretty. So
gotcha. And there's no story in there about a real treadmill, just to be clear.
no,
Okay.
just a metaphorical treadmill.
Nice, nice. Good lesson. Question number 4. What are you most looking forward to in the next 5 years, either personally or in business?
Look, I'm excited about further growth.
Mhm.
In Thankyou, even for myself, I don't know yet what new ventures await. So I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Final question. This is good. We kind of covered in this area, but let's kind of like pull it together in crystallized form. If an entrepreneur feels as if they'll never be able to step out of the day-to-day operations of their business, what's one thing they need to do to make it happen?
Step outside, rest, and have an external look in.
Yeah, perfect. Force yourself out. Look from the outside
Yeah.
in.
Hmm.
Amazing. Justine Flynn, we've covered a lot of great stuff. I really
Thank
liked hearing the
you.
journey, the challenges in the journey. It's something I think we all need to talk about. I think everyone goes through them. So thank you very much for
Mm.
sharing that, but also the exciting things that are ahead for Thankyou, for you, for your family. Thanks for coming on. I want to wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, Tim, and all the best there at home.
Oh, I know. Look, it can only go
Hoping
up is basically where I'm at now.
that's
Like it
right.
can't get any
That's right.
worse.
You just got to lean in. You just got
Yeah,
to lean in,
push through.
and just hope that everyone is well soon as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Fingers crossed. Justine, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you learned something in the episode that you can apply to your business straight away. To keep learning with us, make sure you subscribe and also hit the bell icon so you're notified of new episodes when they're released. You can also follow us on @TheEntourageOfficial on all the social media platforms. So thank you, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode.